3 weeks until Election Day, when voters decide who is the next Chicago mayor. There are many key topics that define this year's race, of course. So we want to bring in experts across the spectrum that can dissect a handful of those issues for the voters. One of them being the impact of gentrification on Chicagoans, and if candidates are discussing this topic enough. Joining us right now is Dr. Carolina Sternberg, Associate Professor and Chair of Latin American and Latino Studies at DePaul University.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this program.
It is great to have you on this program, and a lot of your recent work centers on the topic of gentrification as we inch closer to Election Day 2023. Have you noticed that is fitting into the conversation in the mayoral race, or is it sort of glaringly being omitted? How do you put it?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. I would like to say a few words about gentrification. Is normally understood as a positive thing for the neighborhoods. It usually is even understood that enhances the neighborhood aesthetics, amenities. It may reduce crime. It brings more stability. But actually, in a highly segregated city like Chicago, gentrification means displacement of working class communities, in particular Latino and African American communities that are priced out of their neighborhoods due to the spike of property prices and rent prices and property taxes. That is actually the case of Pilsen, that have been fighting gentrification from 2000 to 2010. They lost about 10,000 Mexicans, and the same situation happens with Puerto Rican communities of Wicker Park, Backtown, and Lincoln Park that have been displaced in different ways across the city. So to speak about the mayor race, I think it's really important for Chicago residents to think about what are the candidates' proposals to ensure that working class families and businesses aren't priced out of their communities. What are the candidates' proposals in terms of expanding affordable housing for communities, working class communities such as Pilsen, that have an average income household from $27K to $58K compared to around $67K of Chicago.
Let me interrupt you just for one quick second, because obviously we're talking about neighborhoods that have worked so hard to build themselves up. Pilsen is a success story. Logan Square, another success story for a lot of Latino families. Where would you encourage voters to go to learn? What are the candidates saying about these things so they can make decisions on this topic? How do folks put some tools in their own toolbox to engage on this?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I haven't seen candidates discussing much about this spike of property taxes, how they will control those spikes. And I learned recently that Jesus Chuy Garcia has proposed an emergency property tax relief of $10 million that will help. I mean, it would ease what he called the cost of housing and cost of living and cost of housing crisis. So I would direct citizens to look at especially Chuy Garcia's new plan, but also to other candidates' proposal, as I was saying, in terms of proposals that will expand affordable housing, right? As Pilsen is one of the cases that it's slowly advancing affordable housing, but also how these candidates, what are their proposals to actually ensure that communities, working class communities, will stay in their neighborhood.
And obviously, can you speak just briefly about how this affects renters as well? Folks who don't own property don't pay property taxes, but in the long run, renters are paying it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the most vulnerable populations are renters. Currently, Pilsen has 30% of population that are homeowners, and the rest are renters. So that means that they are highly vulnerable. Renters are highly vulnerable to the fluctuations of the real estate market. And so these fluctuations immediately price out the populations who are renting, right? They have to survive with, in the case of Pilsen, we have, households that don't make more than 27K to 58K, and most of them are renting.
For folks who are facing these new spiking numbers as the tax bill just continues to skyrocket, it is a critically important conversation that unfortunately isn't getting as much attention as it should. Hopefully we're able to offer some folks some information. Dr. Carolina Sternberg, Associate Professor and Chair of Latin American and Latino Studies at DePaul, thank you for spending some time with us on this very important topic.